All right, so welcome to the webinar. This is about coding rooms and how to use JUnit, their built-in testing feature, to do some auto grading or just how to test your own code. This is obviously the first time for a few people. And so I'm going to go through how to create a new course, how to add an assignment, just pretty quickly. And then I'm going to show you how to test out solutions. So if you have any questions at any time, just throw them in the chat or just unmute. This is pretty informal. It's not going to be, you know, all one way. I'm happy to answer questions, or if I go too fast, just let me know. I'm here for you guys and happy to answer questions or pause or anything. So let's get started. So I am going to share my coding room. So this is once you've logged into coding rooms. I am a big fan of using login with Google, because that way I don't need to remember another password or a username. And since our school uses Google for its email services, it makes it really simple. As you can see, I've used coding rooms for quite a bit of different classes. And one of the big things that coding rooms offers that I'm not actually going to cover today is the live classrooms, where you can actually see multiple students at the same time on your screen doing their coding. So you can give them a template to fill in and you can see how students are doing, where they're getting stuck, and you can help them in real time. So that's a great tool, and we'll have another webinar covering that another time. But I'm going to go ahead and create a new course. You can see there are some templates, Intro to Python, APCSA exercises, but I'm going to start from scratch. Template, we're going to do it in Java. And I'm going to call it JUnit, testing with JUnit. So I'm going to go ahead and create that course. And you can see now I have assignments, I have live classrooms, which I was talking about before. I have a grade book. I don't have anybody in my class. Here are the different sections. Here's the roster. I'm the only one in it. But if I want to invite more students, I'm going to invite them to the main section, or I can create. So I'm going to go ahead and actually copy this URL. I'm going to paste it in the chat. And you are free to join if you'd like. You won't be able to see the tests or the solutions while I'm doing the webinar, but I can add you as teachers to this classroom later on so that you can actually go back in and see what I've done, and that'll be a nice reference for you if you'd like to use that. So while it's saving, it's saved. I'm going to go back into the assignments. I'm going to create a new assignment. So I'm going to call it, I don't know, testing. You can add markdown instructions in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually copy this assignment that I created before. And all I'm going to do is write a class called test me, and it's going to do multiply, divide, and is even. So I'm just going to copy this over into the instructions. So this is where you're telling the students what they need to do for this assignment. And as you can see, you can add code, you can add bold, italics, whatever you want to add into the instructions for the students. I'm not going to assign it yet because I'm not done with it, but you can see if you have lots of sections, you can immediately assign them. You can have when do you want the assignment to go public? When do you want it due? And if you assign a due date, you can also assign an end date where they can't actually submit after a certain end date. I'm going to create a template here. You can see that Coding Rooms creates it for you, a little hello world. And if you click run, it will print out, shockingly, hello world. And but what we want to do is, as the assignment says, we need a test me class. And in that test me class, we're going to have 3 different methods. So in the template, I'm going to change my main from printing hello world to actually creating a test me object and then calling the multiply, divide, and is even methods. These are what the students are going to have to write. But of course, we don't have a test me class defined anywhere. So right in the files here, I just click the plus and I'm going to create a new test me Java file. And again, I'm going to provide them a little bit of template code. And I like to comment things a lot in my template code so that it's clear to the students what they need to do. So I created this class test me. I created the multiply method, sort of a skeleton here, but I don't actually, tell them what to do. And it's the same with the divide, and it's the same with the is even. So the reason that I have all 3 of these methods here is because multiply returns an integer, divide returns a double, and is even returns a Boolean. And we're going to test 3 different ways of testing those. So now we have this basic template that the students can use. And if I run it, it'll say multiply 4 times 5 equals 0, divide 10 by 2 is 0, and is even 4 is false, because my template code here returns 0, 0, and false. So this is what I would assign to the students. It's not quite ready yet because I like to put in my tests before I assign it. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is the test bench. And this is where you can do a few different things. I'm going to add a test case called test multiply. And there's a few different ways to test. You can use input and output comparison. You have to be very careful with that because it is very picky, right? You can, here, why don't we create one? So this is not JUnit specifically. This tells you how what you're going to input and what you expect as output. So for example, in my very first program, when I'm teaching students to use coding rooms and to learn how to, output to the screen, I have them do a hello world program. So I just have them do the template that says print hello world, and there's no input, so that's blank, and the output is hello world. And then the helpful feedback, I just say, be careful about capitalization and spacing or something like that. And so you can see that if you were writing a multiply, just a basic main with a multiply or something, you might want to pass in a couple numbers, and have it output the multiplication, the result, or something like that. I tend not to use input and output because it's so picky and touchy. It is, in my experience, much better to actually use JUnit testing and to have them write methods, because then you can just call the method with exactly the input you want, the parameters you want, and get the return value exactly the way you want that as well. Delete this unit test, or that test. And so what we're going to do is we're going to test multiply, but we're going to actually use a unit test. So I'm going to add that. And now you can see there's quite a bit more code down here, but it's all useful depending on how complicated your tests need to be. So you can import any libraries you need for if you're doing any, math or any other kinds of testing that require libraries. You can set up some things, you can, create objects, or, whatever you need to do before the test. But usually I'd say 90% of the time, you're going to be actually just putting in your test case in here in this one method. And you can rename it if you want. I'm not going to, but I am just going to use what's in here. I'm going to delete it and I'm going to put in my test case. So here's an example. If you recall, I already have a test me object created. That was part of the template I gave them. And then I print out multiplying 3 and 4 should equal 12. And then I use this method, assert equals, which is imported from the JUnit library. So assert, as it implies, says make sure that these two things are equal. And this will work for multiplication because they are both integers. So it's going to assert that what it should be is the first parameter, and then what the student's code returns is the second parameter. So again, what it should equal to is the first parameter, and then the student's code is the second parameter. So this is going to read from the student's code. It's going to create a test me object, and it's going to call the multiply on 3 and 4 from the student's object. Then it's going to compare it to 12 to make sure that that's that they're equals. So if I run this on the template, so I can run the tests on my model solution or on the template. So let's run it on the template. And you can see multiplying 3 and 4 should equal 12. There was one failure. Expected 12, but it was 0 because our default template method returns 0 all the time. So this tells the student that they didn't get it right. So let's go ahead and create a model solution here. When you create a model solution, it copies everything from the template that you already created. So you have exactly the same code that the student had. And in main, it is going to print this out so you can actually test your model solution as well. So let's go ahead and test me, and I'm going to return A times B and save changes, and then I'm going to run it. And you can see that now my multiply works correctly. And why don't I go ahead and fill in the other ones as well. return A divided by B, and return the remainder of A and 2 equals 0. Let's save the changes and run it. And this time, all of my methods are working properly. So again, I'm doing this in the model solution. This is hidden from students. This is just for me. This is my model solution. And I can use the test bench now on my model solution to make sure the tests are working properly and my model solution is working properly. So if I run the tests, I only have one test right now, the multiply test, but you'll see that it's a check mark. Multiplying 3 and 4 should equal 12, and it says, okay, one test. All right. So let's go ahead and create another test case. This time we're going to test division. And again, I'm not going to use input-output. I'm going to use a unit test. And here, the tricky thing about division is that the assert equals, because, as you know, computers don't do very well with long decimal places. We have to give it a parameter, a third parameter that is, the leeway. So the example I've set up here is 50 divided by 3, specifically so that we have a repeating decimal, right? There is no way to make all possible repeating decimals or irrational numbers exactly equal to each other, right? So what we need to do when we're doing an assert equals this time is we say, let's say it has to equal 16.66666 within 0.0001. Right? We could make this as long as we want and it would still work, but 5 or 6 decimal places is probably enough for student code. So in this case, in order to make sure that they're equal, we're going to use 0.0001. So if you forget this, I'll show you what happens. We'll run the tests on the model solution. And even though the model solution is correct, it's going to give us an error. It's not a very helpful error, but it says Java uses or overrides a deprecated API. So what that's saying is it's trying to compare 2 floating point or doubles with without that third parameter. And so it's getting a little confused. So let's go ahead and put that back in there. So now we're going to compare it within 1/10,000th or 100,000th rather, sorry. And if we run the tests on the model solution, you'll see that it worked this time. So anytime you are using floating point numbers, you need that third parameter. All right. So our third test case is going to be Boolean. And I'm going to test even. It's going to be a unit test again. And this time, what we need to do is use the assertTrue. And this is really useful for a lot of different scenarios, obviously not just for, even or odd or things like that, but assertTrue requires the whatever is inside the parentheses to evaluate to true. And of course, you can flip it to make it false, you know, just say not false or whatever, and it'll still work. But like, for example, let me show you. So let's say, you know, we don't want to assert true that 65 is even, right? We want to do something like that, because if is even returns false, then what you're actually asserting is that false equals false, which is true. But in this case, we're going to assert that 66 is even returns true. And so if I run this on, well, let's run it on the template, and you can see that all three of them failed. Expected 16.66 got 0. There was one failure where test even, right? Is even 66 should return true, and it didn't. And multiplying 3 and 4 should equal 12. Expected 12, but was 0. And so if I run it on my model solution, you can see that all three of them are now correct. All right, so let's see if anyone joined. Well, let's say, are there any questions, you know, right off the bat, or is there anything I went too quickly over that you'd like to see?
And it says no assignments yet.
Right. So in my JUnit, so now that I have all the stuff done, I'm going to go into my assignment, and I can assign it. I can publish it. I'm going to release it right away, because why not? And I don't know, I'll make it due in a week at 11:59 p.m. So the nice thing about coding rooms as well is now I can click on student. Oh yeah, and there's prevent late submission. So if you don't want them to be able to submit it more than a week late or something, you can add that as well. But you can see the student preview right here. And so this is exactly what the student will see. So I'm still in my teacher account, but this is what the student will see. In the test me class, write the following methods. And so I'm going to open my assignment workspace. And this is exactly, again, what the student will see. Make it a little bigger. And you can move this around a little bit to make it easier to code. So they see the main class, but they say in the test me class, write these. So they see the template that I created, and they can run it on their own to test it. And then once they're done with it, they can click the submit button in the upper right-hand corner, or they can click run tests, right? So if I run the tests right now, then it'll fail everything, and my score is 0%. So let me go ahead and fix the first one. And then I'll run the tests again. And you can see division and even don't work, but multiply works properly. So let me do all of them. And tests. You can see that they all pass. I can click submit. Now I have 100%. So I don't know if any of you have, and so another great thing is I can see all of my submissions and test runs here. So I submitted, I got 33%. I submitted, I got 0% the first time. All right, I ran the tests, and then finally I submitted and I got 100%. And you can see the results that I got. So the student is really in control of their own testing here as well, which is really nice. And if they mess up the code so much that they can't get back to where they were, which, as you know, happens, they can just reset the entire thing, and it resets the code back to the template, so they can have a fresh start if they want to. And the nice thing from the teacher perspective is you can see I submitted, I got 100% here. Ava also got those, so let's look at Ava's here. All right, I want to look at her code. So I look at test me, and yes, she has exactly the correct code here, which is nice. But I can also look at the changes she made. Obviously, there aren't a lot of changes here, but you can see, so at the beginning, there were no changes. A little while, she had A times B and A over B, and then nothing here. And after a little while, she had a little more. So it records all the keystrokes. And this is really nice for two reasons. One is that you can step through and see what a student's doing, where they are having trouble. You can see all the things that they have submitted. But, and unfortunately, I had to deal with this year, one of my college classes. It showed me that a student was working, wasn't quite getting it, and then all of a sudden, the entire code was changed to something that worked perfectly, that had nothing to do with what they were typing before. So yeah, we had to deal with a little plagiarism there, but hopefully, that's not your primary use. Hopefully you use it mostly for helping students, but it is a really nice feature and works, the timeline of student code. And so that is pretty much how you use the testing to do auto grading. Oh yeah, so once you go into your grade book, you can see exactly the scores for everyone. You can see how they're getting along, if they're not done yet, what they might need help with. The grade book is a really powerful tool. It's really nicely set up, really thoughtful for teachers and how you want to be able to teach coding. And if you have any ideas on how to make it better, the guys and girls at Coding Room are amazingly responsive. Email, Facebook, whatever. You can email me as well, and I can get it to them. But they're adding new features every day, literally every day. You can, collaborate on. You can just if you want to do something quick, right? You can create a workspace in 5 seconds. You don't need to, if you just want to show students something, in Java, you want to show them how to do, I don't know, inheritance or something, and you don't want to create a whole class for it. You just create a workspace, boom, 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 and you're done. And you can collaborate with other students. You can, you can do however you want. So awesome. Well, like I said, I'll make you all teachers in that class. I'm available anytime for, questions, however you want to send them. Happy to, do another quick show and tell anytime. And I will edit this a little bit and post the recording without the Python stuff, probably later today or tomorrow. So.
Thank you for doing this. It's a much quicker way to learn about something new.
Absolutely. No, I'm happy to do it.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.